Hello everybody, welcome into another lesson. So today, and really for the next few lessons, is going to seem like a review of Algebra 1. We are today going to review how to simplify quadratic equations by the FOIL method and also by Binomial Squared. But first we'll do the FOIL method. As many of you may recall if you've taken Algebra 1 or followed my videos since then, if you have the quantity of one sum multiplied by the quantity of another sum, you have what's called the FOIL method to expand this out and simplify it. FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, last. I even color-coded them according to where the lines are going. So your first terms, you'll take the first term of each of the quantities and multiply them by each other. So that would give you A times C. Then you would add the next term, which the next term deals with the outer term. So you would take the first term of the first quantity times the second term of the second quantity, which are the outer terms. You would add that to the first term. Then you would add another term. You're going to deal with the inner terms, where you would take the second term of the first quantity times the first term of the second quantity. Those are your inner terms, which would give you BC. And then finally you would add one more term. You would take the second term of the first quantity times the second term of the second quantity, which would be the last, which would give you BD. So you would get AC plus AD plus BC plus BD. That would be the simplification. So again, I do apologize if this seems like Algebra 1 all over again, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on this like we did then, but it is a very important lesson before we get into harder material. So let's say we're asked to simplify something like the quantity of x minus 2 times x minus 6, right? We have that. So let's go ahead and expand this out. So you're going to take your first times your first. Well, x times x is what? That's simply x squared. Plus you'll take your first term, which would be your x, times your negative 6, so first outer, plus then you'll take your negative 2 times your x in the other quantity, so that would be your inner, plus you'll take your negative 2 times your negative 6, which would be the last, which all this is going to simplify into x squared minus 6x minus 2x plus 12. Which, when we simplify quadratic equations, you add like terms. You collect the like terms. Well, minus 6x and minus 2x are like terms. So you would have x squared minus 8x plus 12 as your final answer. So this simplifies into x squared minus 8x plus 12. I think I'll write with a different color for the next one. What if we have, good one, so we have 4 times the quantity of x plus 1 times the quantity of x minus 1. Okay. So 4 times the quantity of x plus 1 times the quantity of x minus 1. Well, what I'm going to suggest is we leave that 4 alone for a minute and we just deal inside the parentheses. We deal with the parentheses. So this would be 4 times, now deal with your first term of each quantity multiplied. X times x is what? Well, that's just x squared. Then x times negative 1, that's going to be minus x. Then you have 1 times x, so that's plus x. 1 times negative 1 is minus 1. So this would turn into 4 times the quantity of x squared. Negative x plus x will cancel out the x terms. but you still have the minus 1. So you'd have 4 times x squared minus 1, which would simplify into 4x squared minus 4. And this whole x squared minus 1, you may recognize this as the difference of two squares, which when we get into the factoring and solving equations by factoring, this will definitely come into handy. So this is another reason why doing this today is very important. Alright, let's say I have 3 times the quantity of x plus 4 times the quantity of x plus 1. Well, again, your coefficient on the outside, leave that alone. Leave the 3 alone. Just deal with foiling your two parentheses. So x times x is what? That's x squared. Plus, then you have x times 1, which is just plus x. Plus 4 times x, that'll be plus 4x. Plus 4 times 1 is plus 4. So then you'll still have 3 on the outside. While the x squared, you only have a single x squared term, so that'll be left alone. Now x plus 4x, that turns into plus 5x. Then you just have plus 4. Now that you've foiled this, you can take that 3 on the outside and deal with distributing that 3. So you would end up getting 3x squared plus 15x plus 12. That would be the end result. Then this would be the simplified form of the quadratic equation. 3x squared plus 15x plus 12. Let's do one more for foiling here. Good one. We have negative 2 times, that's what I thought it was, times x minus 3, that quantity, times x plus 2. Alright, so we have negative 2 times the quantity of x minus 3 times x plus 2. Well, again, that negative 2 outside the parentheses, leave that alone for a minute, keep it outside of there, and then FOIL your two parentheses. X times x is going to give you x squared. Then x times 2, that'd be plus 2x. Then negative 3 times x, that'd be minus 3x. And then negative 3 times 2, that'd be minus 6. Alright? Well, we need to simplify inside the parentheses. You'll end up having negative 2 times the quantity of, you still have the x squared. Then you have 2x minus 3x, that'd be minus x. Then you have minus 6. And again, you can only add terms or subtract them if they're to the same power, which would make them like terms, if that makes sense. So now you can distribute that negative 2 all the way through. You'll get negative 2x squared plus 2x plus 12. So that's all the foiling work here. So you get negative 2x squared plus 2x plus 12 as your final answer. Alright, now let's move on to binomial squares. So you have what's called a binomial square. And again, binomial means it's an expression or equation of two terms. So let's say I have something like x plus y raised to the second power. So that's a quantity of a sum raised, or a difference raised to the second power. Well, what you do is you take the first term, your x, you'll just raise that to the second power. Now here's what you do. You have to add and take twice 2 times the two terms multiplied together. So that'd be 2 times your x and y multiplied together, plus you'll take your last term, the y, and you'll raise that to the second power. So if you have a binomial squared, you take your first term and raise it to the second power. plus you'll take your two terms, multiply them together, multiply them by 2, which would give you 2xy. Then one more plus, you'll take your last term and raise it to the second power. So that this would give you x squared plus 2xy plus y squared. Now, what if I had x minus y squared? That's still a binomial squared, but what you have to do now is you take your first term still, raise that to the second power. That'll give you x squared. Plus you'll take that 2. Then you multiply your two terms together, but this time you have x times negative y. And then you'll take your last term, you'll take plus your last term, which is that negative y, and raise that to the second power. Which this is all going to simplify into x squared minus 2xy plus y squared. That's exactly what that would simplify into, x squared minus 2xy plus y squared. So for a binomial square that's a difference, it's really the same as a sum or difference, just know that your second term is negative, that's all, which plays an impact in how you do it. But in either case, you take your first term and square it, plus 2 times the two terms multiplied together, plus your last term raised to the second power. So let's do a few examples of that here. Alright, so let's say I have something like x plus 3 to the second power. Let's say I have the quantity of x plus 3 to the second power. So I'm going to take my first term of x, I'll just simply raise that to the second power. Plus now I'll take 2 times the two terms multiplied. 2 times x times 3. Plus I'll take my last term of 3 and raise that to the second power, which is 9. Which would simplify into x squared plus 6x plus 9. That would be the simplified form, would be x squared plus 6x plus 9. Do a few more of these. Yeah, binomial squares are really not that bad. Let's see, I have x minus 5 raised to the second power. So I'm going to take the quantity of x minus 5 and raise that to the second power. So still take your first term, which is x, raise that to the second power, plus 2 times the first term times your second term. So you would get plus 2x times negative 5, plus you'll take your last term, the negative 5, you'll raise that to the second power. So this would simplify into x squared minus 10x plus 25. So all this simplifies into is x squared minus 10x plus 25. Now let's see here. What if I had something like this? 4x plus 3 raised to the second power. So I have the quantity of 4x plus 3 raised to the second power. So I'm still going to take my whole first term, that whole 4x, and raise that to the second power. Since the coefficient on x is not 1, I also have to, if it's anything other than 1, you also have to square your coefficient on top of that. So I'll take that 4x, raise that to the second power, plus I'll take 2 times my first term of 4x times my second term of positive 3. Then plus I'll take that 3 to the second power, which would be 9. Alright, so 4x to the second power would give me 16x squared. Plus 2 times 4x times 3, that would be plus 24x. Then just plus 9. So all this is going to simplify into 16x squared plus 24x plus 9. Alright, let's see here. What if I have one more? I'm just going to do one more, then we're done. So I have the quantity of 8x minus 1 raised to the second power. Well, I'm still going to take my whole first term, that 8x, I'm going to raise that to the second power, plus I'll take 2 times the two terms multiplied together. So 2 times the 8x, this time times the negative 1, plus I'll take that negative 1 and raise it to the second power. So 8x to the second power is 64x squared. This would turn into minus 16x. And then this would turn into plus 1. So all this is going to simplify into 64x squared minus 16x plus 1. So if you want to see more details on foiling and binomial squares, please go back to this video in Algebra 1. I mean that not disrespectfully. I explain it in more detail in the Algebra 1 playlist. This was just a brief review to get us through. Next lesson we are going to switch. We are going to factor the difference of two squares. We'll start with that, and then we'll do some other factoring, and then eventually we'll solve quadratic equations entirely by factoring. So I hope everybody has a great night. Take care.